Revealed. The life-changing message that told me to leave dinner with my kids immediately. The aroma of pot roast filled Jim's small Maplewood kitchen, wrapping around him like a warm sweater on a chilly day. As he set the table, laughter spilled from his two kids, Max and Lily. The sound was an anthem of normalcy, of love coursing through their home. At 42, Jim was doing his best, savoring these Sunday dinners, the cherished tradition that knit their family together. It was more than a meal, it was a sanctuary. But just as Jim placed the last fork down, his phone buzzed violently against the countertop, slicing through the cozy ambience. It was Mrs. Henderson, the widow from down the street. Jim? Her voice cracked, a tremble of distress. Panic twisted in his stomach. I've fallen and I need help. He felt the world come to a stuttering halt. Between the comforting scent of pot roast and the gleeful giggles of his children, a storm raged in his heart. He glanced at Max's bright smile and Lily's innocent laughter, oblivious to the weight of his decision. Did he abandon their special evening for an obligation? But Mrs. Henderson had been there for him before, guiding him through his darkest times. The faces of neighbors swirled through his mind, judgment lingering in the air like an uninvited guest. What if they saw him leave? Thought he prioritized helping a neighbor over family. Torn between his instinct to protect his kids and the call for compassion, Jim swallowed hard. Guys, grab your coats, he said, his voice steadier than he felt. We need to help Mrs. Henderson. Each step felt weighted, the chill of the evening air prickling at his skin. The familiar street was now awash in stares. Curious faces whispered as Jim and his kids rushed past. Heat flooded his cheeks. Did they think he was a bad father? Had he sacrificed their family time, weakened the bonds he fought so hard to strengthen? As they approached, Mrs. Henderson's door swung open. Her frail body was adorned with a blanket, vulnerability etched across her face. Relief mixed with exhaustion danced in her eyes upon seeing them. Thank you, Jim. I didn't know whom else to call. Sounds like you need a little help, he replied, his heart aching at her frailty. His kids scurried to gather whatever they could to aid Mrs. Henderson, laughter now replaced with focused determination. Every moment felt sacred, but a tightness in Jim's chest reminded him of his insecurities. Would they see this as a lesson in kindness or a failure to protect their family time? Before they could settle her in for the evening, an unexpected visitor showed up. It was Millie, the neighbor renowned for her sharp tongue. Jim, you left dinner with your children, she scolded, eyes narrowing. What sort of example is this? Cold dread threatened to drown him. Would Lily and Max understand? Would Millie's accusations plant seeds of doubt? Suddenly it wasn't just about Mrs. Henderson anymore. How could he shield his kids from judgment while impressing upon them the significance of helping others? Jim held his breath, standing firm against the tide. What legacy did he want his children to carry? That sometimes warmth isn't found just at home but in the greater embrace of community? As conflict simmered, he realized he was right where he needed to be. But as the confrontation escalated, Jim couldn't shake the fear that his moment of courage might instead fracture the tender unity he'd worked to build. Would this night become a scar that marred their family memories? Or would it teach them how to extend their hearts? In that charged atmosphere, with everything on the line, Jim prepared himself for a decision that might just redefine their family. Jim's heart raced as Millie's disapproving gaze bore into him. Every word she spoke echoed painfully, bouncing off the walls of his mind. He wanted to explain, to share the urgency behind his decision, but the words felt stuck, choked by rising anxiety. Mom, it's okay, Max finally called out, breaking the tension. He stepped forward, meeting Millie's glare with unwavering confidence. We're helping Mrs. Henderson. She needs us. Lily nodded vigorously, her little hands on her hips. Yeah, Millie. Sometimes we help others, and that's what makes us good people. The warmth of his children's bravery washed over him, grounding Jim in the tumult of emotions threatening to drown him. Could Millie see this? Could she understand that his kids were learning the vital lesson of compassion? Even faced with Millie's sharp tongue, they stood strong. Kids, thank you, Jim said softly, the gratitude swelling in his chest. His voice was steadier now, the fear lurking within him retreating slightly. We are here to support our neighbor. Millie huffed, crossing her arms. And what do you think your kids will remember? The pot roast you sacrifice for a neighbor who never looks out for anyone but herself? Jim swallowed hard, feeling a mix of frustration and sorrow. Was this what it meant to be a parent? The constant balancing act between being there for your family and helping the community? Every choice carved a path forward. Which road was he now paving for Max and Lily? With a deep breath, he turned to Millie. What matters right now is that Mrs. Henderson is alone and scared. Isn't showing kindness what we should all strive for? Millie's eyes softened for a split second. A flash of something human breaking through her icy demeanor. It disappeared just as quickly, but Jim noticed. Had he tugged on a thread that might unravel the sharpness of Millie's facade? Fine, she replied, her voice begrudgingly softer. But just know, sometimes it's better to focus on your own first. With that, she pivoted on her heel and stormed off, her departing footsteps a fading echo. There. Now can we help? Max exclaimed, his enthusiasm infectious. With a lightness in his step, Jim ushered his kids into Mrs. Henderson's cozy yet cluttered living room. The floral wallpaper and countless knickknacks told stories of her past, of a woman who had poured love into her home. Here was where Jim felt a profound shift. It wasn't just about dinner anymore. It was about creating a legacy, passing down values that would shape who his kids became. They settled Mrs. Henderson into a comfortable chair. Jim caught Lily's eye. Do you understand why we did this, sweetie? Lily nodded, a small smile creeping onto her face. Helping feels good, Dad. Exactly, Jim said, hope blooming in his heart. It's about community, love, and sometimes making hard choices. But just then the doorbell rang again, rattling his moment of calm. He opened the door to find a group of neighbors standing outside, their expressions a blend of concern and curiosity. They had noticed Millie's outrage and were now intrigued. Jim, we saw you. Everything okay? One neighbor asked, glancing at the remaining pot roast left cold at home, clearly piecing together the situation in that moment. A stark realization gripped Jim. Would they come to offer support or judgment? Would the evening transform into a town meeting on morals and priorities, spiraling beyond his control? As whispers floated around him, Jim prepared himself. This could be the moment where he either reinforced the values he hoped to instill, or completely unravel what he had built. With all eyes on him, he took a deep breath, ready to confront the oncoming tide. What lay ahead could forever change their connection to the community, but would it be for better or worse? Jim cleared his throat, the group of neighbors watching him with a mixture of concern and curiosity. He felt an urgency spiral within him, a desire to quell their doubts before they grew like wildfire. Yeah, everything's okay, he said, his voice steady but gentle. We're just helping out Mrs. Henderson. She's been having a tough time, and we wanted to lend a hand. He emphasized the last few words as if they were the anchor to his actions, hoping to make it clear that this wasn't just some whim. The neighbors murmured amongst themselves. Jim could feel their eyes darting toward the doorway where Millie had stormed off. A couple exchanged glances assessing Jim's intentions, while others simply stared at him, questions swirling in their eyes. Helping, huh? One neighbor, Carol, said, scratching her head. Is that really what we're calling it? Sacrificing dinner for the likes of Mrs. Henderson? Jim's heart sank. He could sense the weight of judgment pressing down, mingling with the warmth of hope he'd felt just moments before. But Max and Lily stood beside him, their small figures radiating unfiltered confidence. They didn't seem to notice the skepticism around them. It's about being good neighbors. Max piped up, his voice ringing like a bell. Mrs. Henderson needs us. You'd want us to help you too if you needed it. There it was. That spark of childlike belief that could cut through the haze of adult cynicism. A soft wow floated through the crowd, and for a second Jim felt a shift. Max is right, Jim said, allowing his voice to rise in support of his son's courage. We all face hard times. This is the type of community I want for my kids. I want them to grow up knowing the importance of kindness. Isn't that something we all should want? Silence enveloped them for a heartbeat. Then, slowly murmurs of agreement seeped through the crowd, transforming the skepticism into something softer. Maybe I get that, Carol said, a smile creeping onto her lips. It's easy to be cynical, especially living in a place like this. Exactly, Jim said, relief coursing through him. Life doesn't need to be a competition. We need to lift each other up instead of tearing each other down. Just then, a glimmer of movement caught Jim's eye. Lily was stepping forward, her brave little heart leading the way. You know what? Helping Mrs. Henderson is like helping family. And that's what friends do. The crowd shifted again. Several lit up with encouraging smiles. Even Jim could see that Millie's harsh words were fading from their minds, replaced by the bright innocence of children who believed in the good. But before Jim could bask in the moment, a shadow crossed his path. It was Millie returning, her expression softer, yet still guarded. She didn't say a word. She simply stood at the back, arms crossed, looking like she was wrestling with the battle within herself. Jim felt a knot in his stomach. Would she join them in this moment of compassion, or would she toss another dagger into their mission? He watched her with bated breath, hoping against hope that reality might surprise him again. Just as he opened his mouth to speak, he caught a glimmer of uncertainty flicker in her eyes. From that moment of silence, the tension stretched and pulled, each one on the edge of some profound revelation. Finally, would she choose to embrace the compassion he had shown, or push them away and stick to her isolation? What would Millie say next? Jim felt his hope collide with a sense of dread as Millie's gaze swept over the crowd, lingering at Max and Lily's hopeful faces. Would this be the turning point? Or was there more to uncover? Millie's silence felt like a thick fog, wrapping around Jim and the group. His heart raced as he caught the flicker of uncertainty in her eyes, a complexity that both frightened and intrigued him. Was she just preparing for another attack? Or was there a crack in her armor, something that might hint at the warmth buried beneath her cool exterior? Jim began, but the words hung in the air, lost in the anxious anticipation that enveloped them. She breathed deeply, her arms tightening across her chest as if bracing herself against the weight of the moment. Why? Her voice sliced through the tension with a sudden sharpness. Why bother? You think Mrs. Henderson cares about some half-hearted meal? She stepped forward, her expression wavering between anger and confusion. She has always been distant, ungrateful. Why would you waste your time on someone who has done nothing for us? The crowd shifted, tension building again. Jim clenched his fists, digging into the resolve that had pushed him to stand there in the first place. It's not about what she has done for us, Millie. It's about what we can do for her. We all have moments when we don't know how to ask for help. A murmur ran through the crowd, a ripple of realization. Some exchanged looks, nodding, while a few stepped slightly closer to Jim and the children, aligning themselves in solidarity. But it's not fair, she argued, her voice rising. Why should we take on her burden? We've got our own lives to live, our own problems to sort through. Jim took a step toward her, compelled by the ache of understanding. You're right. Life isn't fair. But what if we could be the people who changed that, even just a little? What if, instead of turning a blind eye, we decided to be the change we wish to see? The air almost crackled with emotion. Millie's brow furrowed, battling against the insight creeping in. The children stood next to Jim, looking up at Millie with eyes full of innocent hope, as if believing their simple act of kindness could bridge the gap. Maybe helping Mrs. Henderson can teach us something, Max said softly, his eyes pleading with her understanding. Maybe it can teach us all. Jim saw a flicker of something in Millie, a glimmer of vulnerability as she lowered her chin slightly, her gaze drifting toward the ground. He could sense her internal war, the need for connection battling against her pride. Look, Millie said after a heavy pause, I get that helping others is noble. But it feels pointless sometimes, like pouring water into a cup with holes. Sometimes the act of helping brings us closer. No matter how small, Jim replied, his voice earnest. Every drop matters. What defines us is how we meet each other's needs. How we are there in moments that seem purposeless. Before Millie could respond, a voice broke through the crowd. It was Mrs. Henderson herself, appearing at the front door, frail yet strong, clutching her cane like a banner of hope. I heard voices. Is that Jim? Is it true? You came to help? At the sight of her, Millie faltered, surprise etching her features. The rest of the group froze, their hearts collectively swelling. It was the moment of truth. Please, Jim urged, his words now less about Millie and more about the woman who had quietly watched from the shadows. Let us make this about our community. Millie stood there, caught between the pull of familiarity and the ache of something new. The crowd watched her, needing her to decide, waiting on the edge of belief. Would she step forward, embrace this kindness, and in turn transform her own heart? Or would she retreat back into the shadows again? As the seconds ticked by, the world around them held its breath, teetering on the edge of a decision that could redefine them all. Would Millie find the courage to change? Millie felt her heart race, a rush of conflicting feelings surging through her. The flicker of Mrs. Henderson's frail figure against the backdrop of her front porch seemed to illuminate the dim corners of her doubts. Jim's gaze was unwavering, filled with an expectation that threatened to crack her defenses, and the children stirred beside him, full of innocence she had long forgotten. Mrs. Henderson leaned on her cane, her voice steady yet soft. "I'm grateful, really. You didn't have to come, but it means the world." The crowd shifted, anger and resentment melting like ice. Millie stood, unmoving, as the warmth of those words wrapped around her. Could they really be true? "Who am I to offer help?" she finally whispered, the words tumbling out before she could stop them. "I can't fix anyone's problems. I'm failing at my own." Her voice trembled, and worry filled the space in front of her. "None of us are perfect," Jim responded gently, taking a step closer. "But that doesn't mean we can't try. It doesn't mean we can't show up for one another, even if we don't know how." She wanted to laugh. Half of her hoped he'd crack a joke. Why was he being so sincere? Yet, the glimmer of his words pushed aside her instinct to dismiss this. Perhaps it was the sheer vulnerability in his eyes. He too was uncertain. They all were. A murmur spread among the group, children whispering to one another, adults nodding sagely. Millie felt the swell, something like acceptance, wash over her. The ache in her chest softened, but a dangerous question flickered in her mind. What if it didn't work? What if this doesn't mean anything? She asked, her voice tinged with desperation. What if, in the end, it just hurts more? Then we'll face that together too, Max piped up, his little face serious, those big eyes burdened with hope. It's worth it to try. We just want to help. Around her, the group began to step forward, one by one, inching closer to Mrs. Henderson, their faces lit with a shared purpose that felt almost magical. The spark of community could ignite in the depths of darkness. Couldn't it? Looking back at Mrs. Henderson, Millie saw the faintest smile breaking through the older woman's worn expression. In that moment, a surge of something she hadn't known she needed bloomed within her. "I'll help," Millie finally said, her voice cracking as she stepped forward, vulnerability washing over her. "I don't know how, but I need to." The crowd erupted softly into murmured encouragement, and Jim's eyes sparkled with gratitude. They were all breathing deeply now, the weight of doubt and fear pushed aside as a new energy swirled about them. But even as enthusiasm filled the air, a different thought tightened inside Millie's chest. What if taking this step required sacrifices she wasn't ready to make? Would she lose a part of herself that she had fought so hard to protect? As she positioned herself among the others, reaching her hand out toward Mrs. Henderson, the weight of expectation settled heavily on her shoulders. They could see her decision, and now everything felt fragile. With shaky hands and a heart racing with both fear and excitement, Millie looked toward the community surrounding her. Would they still want her once they saw the cracks beneath her surface? And in that moment of hesitation, all eyes turned expectantly toward her, each beating heart riding the wave of hope. She took a breath, grounding herself in the faces of the people she had long dismissed. What comes next? She wondered quietly as the world buzzed with newfound purpose. Would she be able to navigate this unfamiliar path of connection and compassion? The answer felt just out of reach, like an unopened door brimming with uncertainty. Would she choose to step through? Or would she let fear guide her back into solitude? Mrs. Henderson's hand was weak but steady as it reached for Millie's. The moment their fingers touched, a ripple of energy coursed through Millie. It was as if every doubt and hesitation tried to slip away, leaving behind a whispered promise. Connection was possible. "Thank you," Mrs. Henderson murmured, her eyes glistening with unshed tears. "You're doing something beautiful." As the community surrounded them, their hope meshed with the gentle warmth of acceptance. Children stepped closer, their laughter lilting in the air, while adults stood in a protective circle, grounding the moment in collective resolve. Millie could feel her breath steadying, and for the first time in a long time, hope sparked within her. But still, the shadows loomed in the back of her mind, questions left unanswered like an echo. What if the burden she was about to take on were too heavy? Could she bear the weight of other people's suffering when she was still navigating her own? Let us start small, Jim spoke up, his voice steady, cutting through her spiraling thoughts. Maybe we could help with meals and visits for Mrs. Henderson this week? And then see where that leads us. Millie nodded, grounding herself in the practical suggestion. It felt manageable, but she felt the pull of something larger at play. Was it just about the meals? Or was this a first step toward something more profound? The group gathered around, each person sharing ideas, discussing how they could spread warmth in their community. Max, ever enthusiastic, asked if they could paint Mrs. Henderson's front porch. A quick laugh bubbled up from the older woman, her spirit visibly lifting amidst the chatter. But as laughter buzzed around her, Millie couldn't help but notice the silent faces in the back. Those who felt forgotten, dismissed as they struggled alone. They didn't belong to this vibrant circle of hope, but Millie's heart broke for them too. Can we also reach out to others? Millie suggested suddenly, her voice ringing with newfound resolve. I mean, there are families, neighbors who might need a meal or a friend. Can we expand this? A hush fell over the group. They exchanged glances, weighing the gravity of her words. Then Jim stepped forward, a slow smile spreading across his face. Absolutely. We can organize a community meal, a way to bring everyone back in. Imagine the stories we could share. A renewed energy pulsed through the crowd. The air was thick with an electric anticipation. An idea born of shared purpose began to take shape. Millie felt the weight on her shoulders lifting ever so slightly. Maybe she wasn't just a body stepping out of the shadows, maybe she was the spark that reignited hope in others. Yet, as excitement swelled, so too did uncertainty. She'd have to confront the ghosts of her past that lurked in the corners of those gatherings. Could she face people she had long avoided? Would she be welcomed back after all she had hid behind her walls? A sudden whirlwind of nervousness washed over her. She felt a knot twist in her stomach. There would be judgment. There would be whispers. The what-ifs threatened to strangle her newfound courage. But just as quickly, the faces around her filled with determination and warmth. The children bounced with joy, their singing laughter breaking through the clouds of doubt. Their hope was infectious, reminding her what she had been missing for far too long. Let us do it, she said, her voice gaining strength as the crowd erupted in cheers. Let us build this community together for everyone. But even as joy reverberated through her, the gnawing fear remained. What would it take to truly heal those old wounds? What if her past caught up with her at the very moment she tried to step into the light? As the group continued to plan and share their excitement, Millie couldn't shake the question that lingered. Would the strength she displayed today hold when faced with the storms that chased her from the past? As plans unfolded, Millie found herself swept up in a whirlwind of ideas and laughter. The excitement in the room was electric. Commitments were made, with folks taking on roles to organize the meals, paint the porch, and reach out to those who had been forgotten. But in the midst of all the promises and shared laughter, a sinking feeling settled in Millie's chest. Each happy face reminded her of the faces she had left behind. Families that once sat at tables sharing meals, now replaced by silence. She glanced over to Mrs. Henderson, whose eyes sparkled with newfound hope. Could she truly extend this warmth beyond her fragile comfort zone? Beyond the safe spaces she had built? Okay, everyone. Jim clapped his hands, bringing the group back into focus. How about we meet tomorrow to finalize our plan? This will be our first big step together. Nods and murmurs of agreement circled around. Millie felt a surge of determination rise as well. Still, the unease nagged at her like a persistent itch she couldn't quite reach. Would she really be able to face those she distanced herself from? The smiles around her felt genuine, yet doubt wormed its way into the back of her mind. What if her past overshadowed these joyful beginnings? She fought back the fears of facing her old friends, of hearing what they might say about her absence. The thought alone made her stomach twist. As voices blended into the background, her mind drifted to the days when laughter echoed in her home. Prior to the loneliness, family dinners brimming with love and connection had filled her life. But the laughter had faded, dulled by loss and the weight of distance. Millie! Max's excited voice broke through her reverie. Are you okay? You're kinda zoning out. The concern in his voice drew her back to the present, forcing her to smile. Yeah, just thinking, she replied, forcing the words through the fog of her worries. I'm really excited about this. Don't worry, you're not alone, Jim added reassuringly. That's why we're doing this together. For all of us. The warmth of his words enveloped her, giving her a glimmer of strength. Maybe she wasn't just stepping up for herself, but also for those who had waited for a connection. Perhaps those untouched hearts could mend in the unity of a shared meal. After the gathering ended, Millie lingered behind while others weaved into the evening glow. She looked up at the night sky, stars twinkling overhead like scattered reminders of hope. It wouldn't be easy, but if she wanted to truly make a difference, she had to confront her past instead of running from it. With resolve guiding her, she took a deep breath. Tomorrow would be the beginning of something new. And with it, the echoes of the past would rise to the surface, demanding to be acknowledged, demanding to be healed. But just as she turned to leave, a rustle in the bushes startled her. Her heart raced as a familiar figure stepped into the light, a face from her past she thought she'd never see again. The moment was heavy with unresolved tension. Would this encounter change everything she was trying to build? The figure stepped closer, revealing a face she hadn't seen in years. It was Tom, her childhood friend and a bridge to a past she had locked away. His hands were shoved deep into his pockets, and he wore a hesitant smile, but his eyes bore the weight of unspoken history. Millie, he started, his voice a mix of surprise and nostalgia. I can't believe it's you. She stood frozen for a moment, her heart thudding loudly in her chest. Tom had been a constant in her life, once a friendly face amidst family chaos. Someone who understood her like no one else. Memories of laughter and carefree summers flooded her mind, but they were soon overshadowed by a swell of uncertainty. What could she possibly say to him after all this time? Hey Tom, she finally managed, her voice quiet, wavering just slightly. What are you doing here? I came back to visit for a bit, heard the community was pulling together some events, he replied, scratching his head awkwardly. I didn't expect to see you here though. Millie glanced behind him, hoping for a distraction, the shadows of tree branches flickering in the moonlight. Nothing pulled her focus away. Instead, she was acutely aware of all the unsaid words between them, the awkwardness, the hurt, the questions that hung in the air like thick fog, wrapping around them. Maybe we should talk, she offered hesitantly. The very idea of opening up felt daunting, but at the same time, a part of her yearned for connection. Tom's eyes darted towards the ground, then back to her. Yes, I do like that. His voice was full of sincerity, but there was a flicker of something else, an apprehension that mirrored Millie's own. They found an old wooden bench nearby. So how are you? Really? He asked as they sat down. Millie could sense the depth of his question. A genuine desire to know her struggles, her joys, everything freshly etched on the canvas of her life. It's been hard, she admitted, her breath catching in her throat. The last few years have been a bit lonely. I shut everyone out. The admission tasted bitter, but it felt good to share. Tom nodded, eyes softening. I can relate. I had my share of things I needed to deal with, but it always bugged me that we lost touch. You were always one of the good ones in my life. Her heart squeezed at his words. They reminded her of the times they had shared, and for a moment, she wished they could go back. But the past was a heavy cloak she couldn't shake off completely as their conversation flowed. The moonlight illuminated the spaces between them. It surged with the weight of everything unsaid, the hopes they had abandoned, the families they missed, the dreams that had quietly faded. Tom's phone buzzed in his pocket, breaking the sanctity of their moment. He glanced at it and frowned. Millie saw the way the light flickered across his face, and something pulled at her insides. Was this a sign of hesitance, or a reminder of the lives they had both left behind? What happened to you? After he hesitated, searching for the right words. After everything? After us? A lump formed in her throat. How to answer? She had built walls high and thick around her heart. The night they drifted apart felt like it had happened just yesterday. Her life seemed to split into two distinct chapters, before and after. But now, as she looked at Tom, she felt the familiar spark of connection. Things were different, yet maybe this unexpected reunion could weave into the tapestry she was trying to mend, reintegrating the past she had ran from. Before she could speak, a loud shout echoed from across the street. The planning committee was starting up again, reminding her of her commitments. Millie's stomach churned again as lingering doubts flashed through her mind. Looks like they're getting underway, she said, forcing a smile, yet feeling torn inside. Tom caught her gaze, realization flickering in his eyes. You don't have to hide from the past, Millie. It might surprise you what could come from it. His words lingered like soft whispers in her heart. But standing up required more than just courage. It also needed action, and she was standing at a precipice. Tomorrow will change everything, she answered, half to him and half to herself. Will you be there? He smiled, hope brimming in his eyes. Count me in. As they parted ways that night, Millie felt a glimmer of weight lifted. But the journey ahead still loomed. What if she finally faced her old friends? What if she could rebuild what she had lost? Little did she know that within her answer lay yet another unraveling of old secrets. One that would shift everything she thought she understood about herself. Just as she took her first step away, another rustle from the bushes came alive in her mind. This time, she wasn't just ready to confront the past, she was about to unleash it. The next day dawned gray and cool, the skies heavy with clouds that mirrored the swirling emotions tossing around in Millie's chest. She arrived at the community center early, heart racing as she stepped inside, hoping the familiar smell of baked goods and mingling voices would calm her nerves. But the echo of laughter and chatter felt distant, an unsettling reminder of how long she'd been away from this life. People were setting up tables and hanging decorations for the event, and Millie offered her help, eager for a distraction. She found her hands busy with ribbons and balloons, but her mind kept drifting back to Tom. What would he think? Would he notice how much she had changed, how those walls she built felt like they were crumbling? As she worked, memories flooded back, not just of summers spent laughing, but of nights spent worrying, crying, feeling abandoned. She was no longer that innocent girl waiting for the world to unfold. Each moment had shaped her, left scars she didn't know how to show. Millie! A warm voice jolted her back. It was Sarah, a high school friend she hadn't seen in years. I'm so glad you're here. You look amazing. Millie managed a smile, embracing Sarah, who of all people knew the raw truth of her struggles. Thanks. Just trying to help, Millie replied, betraying nothing of the insecurities transparently knotted within her chest. Are you okay? You seem a little. Sarah hesitated, searching for a word that wouldn't sound accusatory. Nervous? Just a lot of old faces in history, Millie admitted, avoiding Sarah's eyes. She wasn't ready to dive into her truths, not just yet. Just be yourself. We've all been through things, Sarah encouraged. We're excited to have you back. It's about time. She laughed lightly, the sound warming Millie's heart. Taking a deep breath, Millie tried to shake off the cloak of self-doubt. Yeah, it is. Tomorrow will definitely change things, she murmured, stealing glances around the room, searching for Tom amidst the thickening crowd. The time dragged, and just when Millie felt she might fall into her own spiraling thoughts again, the door opened. There he was, Tom, radiating his unmistakable charm, though he looked a bit unsure. She felt her heart leap at the sight of him, and all the tension began releasing in tiny bursts. Hey! You made it! She rushed towards him, the warmth of familiarity grounding her. Of course. Couldn't miss it, he smiled, revealing a hint of the boy she once knew. Where do I fit in? Everywhere. She replied, excitement bubbling as they began wandering around the room side by side. They caught up on life, exchanging snippets of their experiences, slowly rekindling the bond that had been dormant for too long. But just as Millie began to lose herself in their conversation, a flicker of tension spread across Tom's features. Millie, can we talk in private for a second? He asked, his voice uncharacteristically serious. Concern crept into her thoughts as they stepped outside under the gray blanket of clouds. What's wrong? Tom glanced around like he was checking for eavesdroppers. There's something I need to tell you. Something about our past. His voice dropped to a whisper. Fear curled in Millie's stomach. What could it be? She was about to face her past, and now it felt like another storm was about to break. What about it? What's going on, Tom? I found something. Something about that summer, something I should have told you. Then the air felt thick, charged with unspoken words. Millie could only nod, urging him to continue. But the uncertainty gnawed at her, twisting her heart tight as he spoke. Shadows stretched further across the ground, and with every word, she felt those walls she'd built begin to tremble. He dropped a bombshell that sent shivers down her spine. Millie, I think I found the reason why we lost touch. And it's something that goes way deeper than either of us realized. Panic electrified her veins, But at the same time, a desperate curiosity surged. What secrets lay just beneath the surface, waiting to be unveiled? The past never truly stayed buried, did it? And she was about to dig deeper than ever before. Millie, I think I found the reason why we lost touch. And it's something that goes way deeper than either of us realized. The words hung in the air, thick with anticipation. Millie's heart raced. She barely dared to breathe, uncertainty wrapping around her like the heavy clouds above. Tom, what do you mean? She pressed, desperately urging him to continue. She felt a mix of hope and fear swirling inside her, battling like fierce winds in a storm. If you can just hear me out, he said, running a hand through his hair as if seeking clarity for himself. Remember that summer before we drifted? The secrets we shared? I found something. Letters. From your family. They weren't just letters. Millie's breath caught. Memories flooded back, days spent laughing, evenings under the stars, and whispers about dreams that now felt like faded photographs. But those letters, she hadn't thought about them in years. What do you mean? Tom took a deep breath, his eyes serious. I didn't want to believe it, but it hinted at something. It spoke of family troubles. It felt like there was more going on than either of us knew. He shifted uncomfortably. Millie, I think it's one of the reasons we lost each other. Anguish washed over her, coupled with a flicker of understanding. The weight of her family struggles had weighed heavily, but they were cloaked in secrecy, buried under judgments and expectations. But did he really think those words could explain everything? What do you want me to do with that? Open old wounds? She asked, her voice trembling. I tried to put that chapter behind me. Tom nodded, understanding in his gaze. I get it. But sometimes facing the past head-on can reveal paths we didn't know we needed. If we're going to rebuild, we can't do it on a shaky foundation. He took a step closer, his sincerity palpable. We need to acknowledge what happened if we want to break free. Millie felt a surge of resistance but knew he was right on some level. How long could she hide from the truth? A part of her wanted to resist, to hide away. But then she remembered Mrs. Henderson, her neighbors, and the warmth of connection she had just begun to embrace. What if it helps me finally heal? The words escaped her lips, and she felt a flicker of determination. Maybe sharing this with the community, confronting it, maybe that could be the first step. Thomas' eyes brightened, as if she'd just taken a leap of faith. That's it, Millie. Together we can face those stories and make peace with them. You don't have to do it alone. She felt the ground beneath her shift, uncertainty replaced by a rising wave of hope. With every word, the past seemed less like a prison and more like a chapter begging for new life. And isn't that what the community was for? As they returned to the gathering inside, laughter punctuated the air, clashing beautifully against the unease she felt. Tom's presence was like an anchor, pulling her back toward purpose. Are you ready? He whispered. Millie's heart was still pounding, but now it felt invigorated. Yes, let us show up. For ourselves. For them. Together, they stepped back into the vibrant mix of friends and families sharing warm smiles. The atmosphere buzzed with the potential of everything that was unfolding. Her heart swelled when she saw Jim assisting Mrs. Henderson, laughter dancing among the crowd. As they approached the makeshift stage, her palms clammy but exhilarated, Millie glanced at Tom one last time. I have something to say, she declared, her voice strong, cutting through the layers of chatter. The crowd turned, eyes widening with interest, hearts aligning toward her. I know I haven't been around, I haven't allowed myself to be a part of this community. But I realize that the past is something I need to face, not run from. And I want to do that with you, all of you. Together. A ripple of excitement surged through the crowd, branches weaving tighter, forging newfound connections. She felt Tom's reassuring presence beside her, a strong pillar of support, reminding her she was not alone. As she opened up about her family struggles, the doubts and the distance, she saw the nods of understanding ripple throughout the listeners. These were the faces she'd long avoided, yet they were now willing to embrace her truth. I want to make amends, to help build a community where we all feel support, Millie continued, growing stronger in her conviction. Let us not just help one another in big gestures, but in the quiet moments too. When a friend feels alone or burdened, that's where compassion truly lives. One by one, faces around her turned into expressions of belief, signaling that her vulnerabilities were met with acceptance. She hadn't just come to break the silence of her past. She was igniting a flame of connection, courage, and healing. The warmth swelled, filling every corner of the room. And as Millie looked around, she realized this was what she had longed for: community, friendship, and a promise of belonging. Together, she finished, her heart soaring, "We can build this. We can face anything as long as we do it as a family." The crowd erupted with applause, and in that explosion of sound, Millie felt herself transcend the past, stepping forward into a brighter future. Each person in that room felt it too, the pain of judgment replaced with the hope of connection. Today was the first step. The door had been unlocked, and she was on the verge of a transformation that would resonate far beyond their small town. Now was the moment to flourish, to embrace not only her truth, but also the strength of a community rallied in support. As she looked into the smiling faces of her friends, Tom's encouraging nod felt like the final piece, solidifying both their past and their shared future. This was only the beginning. You need to subscribe now to catch the next exclusive stories that will inspire you. Leave a like now to feed the algorithm with positivity. Comment your reactions and feelings about the ending below. Share instantly this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this transformation. Don't wait not even one more second. Only true fans understand the importance of supporting the channel through these actions.